It's the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thanks for being with us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Good morning. And we are happy to have joining us the Deputy Director for Policy at the Arizona Department of Transportation, Kevin Biesty. Thanks for taking the time with us, Kevin.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Kevin, so glad to have you here with us today.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your 20 years with the DOT in Arizona, a department that's been a pioneer in making autonomous mobility a reality. Since you've seen this evolve from the inside, give us a little view of how this all came about.
Sure. So back in about 2009, 2010, there was a lot of discussion on the national level, and I'd say international level, among infrastructure owners about this talk about self-driving cars are coming. And as an infrastructure owner, we had to engage and figure out, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for our infrastructure? Are we going to have to do anything substantially different? You know, there's talk of sensors in the road, signs, smart signage, V to X, V to V. So there was a lot of, discussion at the national level. We're part of many national groups and organizations. So we began that dialogue trying to seek answers. Around the 2012-2013 timeframe, there was actual legislation proposed primarily in the Western states to have DOTs or Department of Motor Vehicles, and here in Arizona, that's one entity. So our motor vehicles is part of our department. And it was a piece of legislation that was introduced to have the DMVs or the MVDs here in Arizona develop standards for testing these vehicles. And in 2012 and 2013, in each of those legislative years, there was a bill to do that. And that really kicked off the dialogue because, quite frankly, we weren't ready to start developing regulations for a technology that we haven't seen, we haven't experienced. There was really no discussion among the companies and at least the governments in Arizona. So we took that opportunity to engage with the companies, and that really kicked off the discussions. It increased our involvement with national groups and the desire to work with these companies. And as we continued to evolve in this space between that time and when Governor Ducey came into office in 2015, and he was very excited about technology and how these advancements could help, the citizens of Arizona. And what we began to see is that what we're talking about early on is testing vehicles. Well, we've been testing vehicles on U.S. roadways for decades. I mean, how much different is this, particularly when you have an operator in the vehicle? GM and Ford didn't come to each state and said, hey, we got this whiz-bang technology called an automatic transmission. Can we, test this on your roadways? So that really was the impetus to look at, okay, what's our current regulatory structure? What's the current regulations about this activity? And how can we use that as much as possible? So that began the discussion about using executive orders to kind of focus the state into the direction where we want to go as regulatory agencies. And then from that, we've been able to evolve and enshrine some of the best practices from those executive orders. And we just did that this past session in House Bill 2813. So that's kind of the elevator pitch of how we got to where we are today.
Why is it important? What's the feeling in the state and your personal feeling? Why is this an important thing to tackle?
So again, early on as infrastructure owners, it was more of a preparation, right? Because if you recall back in that time frame, there was a lot of disruptive technologies, ride sharing, and mobility services that were coming into communities and disrupting, for better or worse, how communities were providing these services. So we were trying to get out ahead of it and figure out, okay, as an infrastructure owner, how do we prepare for this? And then as that discussion evolved, then it was focused on the safety, right? If you think about it, car manufacturers, roadway engineering have made great strides in trying to protect road users, right? All the advancements in car technologies to protect the occupants and even people outside of the roadway, outside of the vehicle. Infrastructure owners looking at roadway design and features to help protect the people that use that facility. The one critical piece that's missing is the driver, the actual person controlling that vehicle. And societies have wrestled with carrots and sticks and trying to figure out how to best have people operate their vehicles in a responsible way. But yet fatalities continue to go up, collision rates continue to go up. Even during a pandemic, we had a roughly 30% drop in people driving, but yet our fatalities were up 10%. So again, technology has helped with roadway safety. Now we need to look at driver safety.
Yeah, I mean, I've commented many times on this. We've done a great job with crash mitigation aspects of it, dealing with it to protect the driver, the airbags, and so on. I'd hate to say back in the day, I said I'm never going to wear a seatbelt. I mean, I was a Trumpian on that one. I'm never going to do. Holy hell, no! There's nothing. I put that sucker on all that. Some of us eventually learn. It might take a while, but these things are all in there, and of course everybody likes to talk about the 90 whatever percent of crashes and so on. I say 90% of crashes are blah blah are because of human misbehavior, and we should call it misbehavior because we should give it a bad name. We should have a little stool in the corner and put a dunce cap on them whenever anybody does it, to just point out that this is, as I like to say, when we start doing this, look,
right.
It's not what we're. Why are we asked to stop at a stop sign? It's to be able to make sure we can look here and look there, that nobody's coming, so that we don't get whacked. I mean, it's all about safety. Yet we start doing this, and we start doing this, and we start doing some. I mean, that's when we're really focused. All
right.
of us are really good. All of us are really good, okay?
And
whether or not technology can beat us, I don't know, okay? But let's stop this. Let's stop all this other junk, okay?
Well, our director, John Halakowski, often tells us we need to try to make bad driving and impaired driving kind of like what happened with smoking, right? You would never walk into a daycare center and fire up a cigarette. The whole community in that building would lash out against you. We need to have that same mentality when we have parties and we're serving alcohol or we know somebody who's doing something. It has to just become a pariah within society.
Yeah, and I think we have made progress, the designated driver and so on and so forth. But of course, if we can get this technology to work as well as we work when we pay attention, then the good thing about it is it's not going to, we should be able to write the code so it doesn't misbehave.
Right.
Come on. I mean, every time misbehave, somebody goes in there, I'm going to change that line of code, bam, and we're good, So, it's as opposed to, changing the behavior, as you pointed out, changing the behavior of some of these folks out here, it's like a real challenge, right?
Right. So, so again, it was, what changes do we need to do with the infrastructure, and then safety, and then finally mobility. We have a large population of elderly individuals in Arizona, big retirement communities. And we have, every community has people who are either visually impaired or have, ability challenges that don't allow them to operate a vehicle. And if you can set it up so that they can get the service, mobility on demand that they need when they need it, society is going to benefit. The technology has ripple effects beyond just it's not going to crash.
It's so nice to hear you say that, because I guess in my listening of others, so few really say it, that in fact the opportunity here is to provide mobility, and more mobility correlates directly with quality of life. I mean, if we could,
Absolutely.
I guess sure, look at what we had to do in the pandemic when we were stuck at home. Many people, you want to go back, to that? I don't think so.
Imagine people that's their whole life. Yeah.
Imagine people that don't have a car sitting out there in the driveway that they can just hop on and take to wherever the heck they want to go. I mean, to me, that's what sort of fuels Fred and I and me on this thing, is that, and this is an opportunity for them, and will they own one? Why should they own one? If somebody should be able to, as I think Waymo is doing there in Arizona, be able to make it available to you, and make it available to you. Geez, it's just a little bit of code that sends it out to you. They don't have to get somebody out of bed to say, hey, you have to go drive, brush your teeth first, and put on your shoes. I mean, the darn thing goes.
Yeah, and there are some amazing mobility on demand models out there where, here I am in a meeting right now having a conversation with you, and I can set up my day to know that, at 9 o'clock, I need to be on my way to my next meeting, and I can set it up so that I walk out of my office or my home and there's a vehicle there waiting for me. I get in, it knows that it's going to drop me off at location B, and that there's a person there that needs to go to location C.
Right, because the system is out there knowing all this stuff, and it can manage it, and it doesn't have to get into your privacy, schmivacy, whatever, and so on. And all of a sudden coordinates itself. And as we, of course, need to think about around here, is we should try to share rides. The sharing of rides, if we can make that so that, when people are in there, they're on their phones anyway. They don't even know you're there. I mean,
look on an airplane.
I look at my students who go out on a date. I walk in a restaurant, they're on a date. Each of them, they're like this. I mean, what the heck's going on? Whatever, but I don't know. But so it's, they can do that, right? And all of a sudden, look at what you have. I mean, instead of the environmental or the cost associated of a vehicle taking one person, you now have that for taking two. How about three or two or three? I mean,
it should definitely fit in. It should definitely fit into the mass transit scheme. Absolutely.
It is mass transit without the masses. Okay, because you don't need and you can't get masses, because to get masses you have to have people wait around for all day. You have to have people only going to this thing, and then who knows what having to do, and so on. So the way we've ended up distributing ourselves is it's a 2Z 3Z type of thing. It's not a 50E. Manhattan. Who cares about it? Forget Manhattan. I mean, it's separate. The Manhattan can take care of itself. Okay, we're not doing here in Jersey. Well,
again, recovering New Yorker here, Alan.
Yeah, I know. Well, I understand here, but hey, we can't solve all the world's problems here. So, but look in Arizona. I mean, it's perfect. And then one of the things that my students and I have found in looking at, trip patterns nationwide and how this thing would serve, turns out that in rural communities, you have opportunities for ride sharing. Why? Even though there are fewer people there are fewer places to go. And so therefore, guess what? There are still twosies and threesies who might want to go there at certain times of the day. 2 o'clock in the morning, of course not. Okay. But heck, New Jersey Transit doesn't operate their buses at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So anyway.
Right.
Kevin, the first and I think only place where there is truly driverless mobility being offered commercially to the public is in Chandler, Arizona.
In the world.
In the world.
Right.
Is in Chandler.
Is in Chandler.
Waymo.
Right. Isn't that true?
Yeah. What insights can you give us about the role the DOT played in allowing Waymo to make that decision to take that risk?
Sure. So, hindsight, I will tell you that much of the credit goes to the partnerships that we've been able to form with the city of Chandler, from, the mayor's office to the police chief, to the fire chief, to the elected officials there and the community. I'm a resident of Chandler. It's a great city to live in, and we've been able to form those partnerships with the local communities. And I would say communication and collaboration early and often was key. You know, when I first got into this space, I had all the same questions that everybody else kind of has. What if, right? What if the vehicle goes out of control and it doesn't stop? You know, what if it just loses its way and crashes into something? Well, those are not new challenges that we face, right? I had a coworker who was on a way to a meeting and was driving on an interstate, and unfortunately, a woman in the other direction had a medical issue and passed out behind the wheel, crossed over the median, and severely injured him. Thankfully he's healthy today, but it was an issue of just a person blacked out behind the wheel because of a medical condition. You know, you look around the roadway when you're driving around, those are all individuals operating a vehicle, and everybody has a different level of skill, abilities, health. You know, somebody had a good night's sleep, somebody else didn't. Somebody's distracted because of a thing that's happening at home or a trouble that they're struggling with. And yet, you know, we're asking them to focus and be on the roadway. So, you know, what really helped us was stepping back as a government and going, okay, what is our current authority, right? And what are we talking about? How do we advance what we believe will be a benefit to society on many different levels? And are we introducing any new risks? And if so, how can we mitigate them? And this process over time, really, we looked at we have the authority and the abilities we need right now. And we will implement new tools if the data and there's evidence to show that we need to do something. It's hard for government not to do a knee-jerk reaction to, well, we've got to control this because somebody may get hurt, right? And government is responsible for at least trying to protect the citizenry that they serve. So again, it was a lot of dialogue with the local communities. There was a lot of questions early on, and hats off to the companies that are testing here. Our expectation is that they're going to engage frequently and often with us and the communities in which they're residing in.
So
yeah,
go ahead, Alan.
You know, I'm not doing it. You're doing it. I'm sitting here pontificating about it. But you know, but really, the sociology of this is enormously important at this point. You know, it seems as if, and I believe that the technology is really here. Now we need the sociology to be able to have it be welcomed in the community, have it be appreciated in the community, have it serve the community. And in some sense, the sort of the other concept that Fred and I have been talking about here is one in which, since we're at the very beginning, we still have the opportunity to do some molding and some shaping of this technology in a way such that it really does serve those that it is trying to serve. So it should be listening to them. It should be engaging with, exactly as you say, you know, the community piece just seems and it seems to be so important to us from the outside. And it's nice to hear that from the inside, those that are actually accomplish this have seen that this is an important step.
Right. So, you know, I look back in I think it was late 2018 when they launched, Waymo launched their program for commercial use. Mm-hmm. But before that, they adopted an early rider program. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because, you know, I had been working in this field for a while then and handling a lot of these issues. And I started seeing this vehicle show up at my children's school and dropping a family off and picking them up. And this was their vehicle to use when they needed it within, you know, a certain area. And so, they involved the community early. They got early adopters. And I can tell you anecdotally, but I think at some point, if we do a survey in the city of Chandler and, parts of Tempe and Mesa where these services are available, I could tell you anecdotally as a resident of Chandler, people are not concerned about this vehicle. In fact, early on, the one question I would always get is, how do I get in one of these? How do I become part of this? When I first took my kids and my family in one back in October, we had driven around, and the kids were like looking at the vehicles next to them like, hey, look at us, there's nobody in the front, look at us. People didn't pay any attention at all.
I mean, that's sort of wonderful. I mean, the no news, the know what about it is really what's so great, because if it's really going to provide the mobility and the improvement in the quality of life to people that it really has the opportunity to do, it can't be an amusement ride. It has to be a normal thing. This is, you don't want to make Chandler into Disneyland, right?
No, and we don't want to risk people on just something that's cool, right?
Right.
So and you think of the mobility options for people. So I mentioned earlier, I took one of our directors from another agency, Department of Administration, because there's some discussion about in the future using these vehicles to move employees around or people who need services, right? So we took a ride, and he was fascinated with the technology. But when we came back to the Chili's after the ride, because that's where I like to start and end my day, right, at Chili's, this couple came up to us and were like, our kids really want to take a ride in the robot car. That's what they call it, the robot car. How do we, and I said, look, just, go find the app and download it and, and try it. And they said, we're going to do it.
Yeah. It's the world leadership that you are doing in the deployment of this is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, irrespective of all the people that say we're looking into it, it's all the gonnas, you're doing it. You're actually doing it, and it's actually working, and this guy, it doesn't go everywhere. Well, my car doesn't go everywhere. Okay.
Right.
I mean, get out of here.
I often hear the criticism that, well, it doesn't work in the snow. Well, okay, right now it doesn't work in the snow, and yes, we get snow in Arizona for your listeners.
Yeah. No, I know you do get snow. Everybody seems to think you guys don't get.
Listen, when the first car came out, was I able to go, from California to New York in the first car? I mean, we got to put some realistic, and we shouldn't rush the technology for the wrong reasons.
This isn't being solved to get people through 6 feet of snow or through fog. Are you kidding? If there's fog, stop. Okay. Wait for the fog.
We have, and that's exactly right.
I mean, this is like crazy.
I've been in rainstorms and dust storms where I had to pull over and wait for it to pass.
Not you had it, you should have. Okay. Yep. In a sense, I mean, what are you trying to be Superman or something? Come on, cut it out. And in fact, what I like to say around here in New Jersey, I'd love to have 24/7, 360. Don't need to do 365. I think last winter, 3 or 4 times, Governor Murphy, a state of emergency in New Jersey, stay at home, don't drive. Okay. And that's not because we have, Waymo all over the place here. It's because he knows that if we get out there, I mean, we can't do it. So cut it out.
Know your limitations.
Well, Kevin, for those of us who haven't had the opportunity to ride as you have in one of these vehicles from Waymo, people have questions. Is this for real? There's no one from Waymo in the vehicle. There's no one from Waymo following the vehicle. So describe for us what is going on, what the reality is.
Sure. So when they launched their Waymo One program, they opened it up that people within that within that geographic area, which is roughly about 50 square miles in the East Valley, primarily the city of Chandler, that you can, just like you would an Uber or a Lyft, request the vehicle. And it will tell you, yes, there is a there's a self-driving Waymo available. It'll be there in 3 minutes. Now we had instances where there's been inclement weather, and out of an abundance of caution, it would say, look, there's a vehicle available, will be there in 3 minutes, but there will be a safety driver in the vehicle. That hasn't happened to me yet. And I've used it, I don't know, roughly 6 or 7 times over the past few months, more so to give people the experience. But so you would punch in where you're at. It knows where you're at. It'll tell you, ask you where you want to go. And then when you put that information in, a white Chrysler Pacifica Waymo vehicle will pull up, and in the windshield, there's a digital screen that has your initials in it. And the vehicle pulls up, the doors open, you get in, you press start my ride, and nobody is in the front. The front is kind of blocked off with a plastic plexiglass. And the screen gives you all the information, where you're going, what's the route. There's a button up on top that allows you to pull the vehicle over if there's an issue, or if you feel you don't want to do this, you just press the pull over button and it finds a safe place to pull over. There's a two-way communication with their operations center, which is also in Chandler. And that's come on a couple of times with me. In fact, I was on a ride and it took a different route that I was expecting it to go. And the customer service individual came on and said, Mr. Biesty, this is Waymo customer service. Just want to let you know that we're switching the route. It won't delay you too much, but there was an issue up ahead that the vehicle wants to avoid. And so, yeah, it pulls up to the destination. Now, I will tell you, it's not laser accurate. There are certain areas where it won't drop you off at the exact location for whatever reason, but within a reasonable distance of where you want to be dropped off. And the vehicle pulls over and it lets you out, get out, and away it goes. You can even change your route mid-drive.
Kevin, that's terrible. That's terrible. You mean if I want to be dropped off in the middle of an intersection and get run over, it won't let me do it. It won't let me do that. I mean, what the heck? I mean, come on, Waymo.
Yeah.
Come on. And are you sure there's not a guy back there in the back with a little something?
No. You know, I was part of an experiment like that with Volvo. They did an experiment with that where actually the person I thought in the back that was just an engineer, actually there was a black fake like cover, and I couldn't see their hands, but they were operating the vehicle.
I won't name names, but I know of enormous number of fake videos out there by reputable companies in which they were. No,
I would invite anybody.
It is. You know, look, Volkswagen and so on got hopefully whacked really bad for cheating, and we can't have people in this business cheat. Okay.
I've seen behind the curtain. Okay. This is the real deal, and we have other companies here who are testing. Not doing commercial deployment with riders like Waymo is, but we have Too Simple, who's moving freight from California to Texas and the border, and we got about anywhere from 8 to a dozen companies at any one time.
Well, I think the operations center is not actually controlling the vehicle in any way, for people who might wonder about that.
I think we have, my view on if you're doing testing, then you should have somebody in there. I mean, why not?
Absolutely.
They can be just, I'm a big believer in the whole disengagement thing. Disengagements are a number of disengagements you have are important. I mean, you're learning, as we've been discussing before, you're learning what you don't know. Okay. And so disengagement, in fact, you should be testing so that you maximize number of disengagements. So you find the maximum places where you have to fix it. but certainly when you're testing, absolutely have somebody in there. It's testing without anybody in it. What are you trying to prove? I mean, if the person ends up not doing anything, then it's as if they weren't there. So that, that's a great test, or whatever. So anyway, but when you're carrying customers, and to be able to do it affordably, which I think is one of the missions here. Hey, if this is only for rich people, then that's one thing. But rich people have had it. I mean, you get a chauffeur, you can get a black car, you can get whatever, you can get a helicopter, you can get a,
Right.
whatever. But the idea of, if you're really trying to provide mobility to folks who could really benefit, improve their lives from this, then in fact you're going to have to make it affordable. Okay, and the affordability is the real opportunity here. And if you have to pay for a Waymo engineer to be in there, you probably can't afford it. Okay, and so therefore that doesn't solve anything. But getting it in the way that you are doing it out there in Arizona, my goodness, that's and as far as I know, the only place in the world.
Well, I've mentioned
Waymo's
this
been on with us, and they've congratulate them on how careful they've been in deploying it.
Yeah.
Well, and I've mentioned this in other conversations with folks. I've been in government here in the state of Arizona for almost 30 years. And this is one of the one issues where there is absolutely alignment, from the governor down to our agency directors, down to our local governments and across the county, and everybody sees the ripple effect of the benefits impacting many people, and everybody really is pulling in the same way. So it's rather refreshing.
Well, it's really nice to have you say that, and to hear you say that from someone who's actually doing it, as opposed to thinking about doing it or gonna do it or all the other whatevers. And this is what Fred and I and many others here in New Jersey are trying to create in New Jersey, is we're really trying to learn from you. Why do we want to learn from you? Is because as we look at it, you're successful at this, and you've gone through, and any help you can give us to keep us from, I'm sure you hit some rough spots and so on and so forth. We just want to learn from you, because here we think in New Jersey, we do what you're doing in Chandler. We're going to improve many people's lives.
Well, we need to learn from each other. I mean, there's no competition, on safety. Right. I mean, we just need
absolutely.
to, because everything we've done is out of, learning from other states and sitting down. Like I said, it's really a big part of it was, when Governor Ducey became governor, he challenged his agencies, learn, go places, learn, and bring it back, right? And that's what we should all be doing, is having these conversations and learning and advancing together.
We're all about this. There's always in the private sector the issue of collusion and so on, and antitrust and blah blah blah, right, and IP protection. But Fred and I sit here and argue that my goodness, when it comes to safety, we want collusion, we want cooperation. We should all be in this together. You have one bad thing, it's bad on everybody, and if you find you trip over something that's, oh my goodness, I solved something, let everybody else know too. Come on. I mean, one isn't going to go out there and compete.
The aviation industry is a good example of that.
And look at what they've done for us. Look at how safe that darn thing is. My goodness, it is phenomenal.
Before we take a quick break, Kevin, based on the experience so far, tell us what your vision, maybe the vision of the state is. I know you speak more for yourself, but what's the vision for the future here, moving beyond Chandler? I mean, this is real in Chandler, and everybody wonders, okay, you're doing it in Chandler, what's next?
So I think, what we're doing right now is we're going to continue our cautious and deliberate approach, right? And continue to evolve safely with these companies. The Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academy of Science, had a great paper that they released back in 2016 or so, 2015 timeframe, and they looked at all the disruptive technologies that we've been through, everything from the railroad to electricity to the automobile, and I see a lot of it like when electricity was starting to become a mainstream in America. It started out in the city, and it gradually branched out, right? It wasn't in every part of the country all at once, but it started and it just branched out from there. And I think that's what you're going to see with these technologies. They're going to be in a primarily urban area, and their operational design domain, which is the fancy term of, this is where I can operate and where I can't operate, is going to gradually expand. And you're going to see that. I mean, yes, we have Chandler, Arizona, we have the East Valley, but we also have the I-10 corridor in Arizona and parts of California and Texas, utilizing these technologies up on I-40. So I think you're going to see a lot of pockets, and they're just going to expand. They're just like the electrical grid. It's just going to expand as the technology evolves.
We'll be back with more, but first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, look for a white paper. It's called The Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Some great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. You may know that ETFs can be a good way to spread risk with investments and focus on a particular category of stocks. The website again is motoetf.com. We're back with more of the Smart Driving Cars podcast and our guest, Kevin Biesty, Deputy Director for Policy at the Arizona Department of Transportation. Kevin, what are you hoping to see in the infrastructure bills coming out of Washington? What might be of most help to you, and does any of it relate to what's going on with autonomous vehicles?
Well, first, as a State Department of Department of Transportation, funding overall for infrastructure is desperately needed, both at the federal level and local level, like a lot of states are struggling with. But in this realm, I guess the first thing I would ask is that we do no harm, right? Let's not delay these necessary safety advancements due to fear. When we're talking about community acceptance to these technologies, psychologically we fear things we don't know, right? It's just built into us. So I think the more we become exposed to these technologies and the more we experience them, fear will decline. We shouldn't slow things down and still have 30,000+ fatalities. That's 100 people a day, 100 lives lost every day because there may be some risk. We shouldn't be reckless, but we should move forward, and we should try not to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about vehicles operating on the roadway, which has been done, for decades. Let's look at our existing regulatory structure, the feds, NHTSA, the vehicle design and equipment, and the states, governing the operation on the roadway. And let's see how we can move forward and identify those areas where we absolutely need additional regulation or tools in our toolbox to advance. But again, we need to move on this, and we shouldn't just have fear or other issues slow us down.
Do you see any room here for private ownership of truly driverless vehicles?
Well, personally, yeah, I like driving. I like the ability, if that I have a vehicle that I can go where I need to go when I need to go. But that's not a reality for everybody. And these technologies are extremely expensive right now, and it's going to be a fleet model. That's my prediction. It's going to be a fleet model where it's a service that you subscribe to. And then how that fits into mobility for everybody is going to grow with the technology. So I think if we look at our current structure here in America and how we're laid out, cost is going to be a driving force, and no pun intended, on whether or not these are going to be individually owned. But I do believe, and the models out there right now are these are going to be fleet operations for the foreseeable future.
Well, Alan talks frequently about the liability issues alone.
Yeah, Fred asked me that question, and I won't hem and hum like Kevin. I'll just say, no, personal ownership of these things is almost silly. Okay, I am too irresponsible to own one of these things. I'm going to have my vehicle go out all by itself to go give Kevin a ride and be out there without me, somewhat being responsible. I don't know. I'm just, I don't think that happens. I just don't think.
There are programs right now where people lease out their vehicles, right?
And I understand,
the insurance market was able to come together and say, okay, we need to, accommodate this. Lyft drivers, Uber drivers.
How expensive is the insurance going to be? It's going to think I'm the one I'm responsible for maintaining. To me, I think, I think that the fleet model is so powerful in terms of a business case. A ability to make a profit, the ability to deliver a service, that it is just going to dominate this, as opposed to me, something that I can't drive, that is whatever, that I'm not in, that I just send out to go get my chicken sandwich and bring it back to me. I mean, I just think it's totally silly.
Well, I
don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I took the question as, could I, I have a Honda Civic right now that I use. Would I be able to purchase a fully self-driving Honda Civic for my personal use? And
you never drive.
Is Honda willing to take the responsibility once they sell that to you? If they tell you it's full self-driving, that's
that sucker that the driver that they put in there that's going to drive it is going to work, and they're the ones that are going to have to be responsible for it.
Right. Well, I'm a firm believer that our current insurance industry is going to come up with a model for it. They did with ride sharing. They did with everything else. They say, okay, here's how much it's going to cost you for this policy based on the risk spread out over this number of people.
Sure. So Jeff Bezos will be able to do that. Great. Thanks, Jeff. And you and Elon can go ahead.
He can put it on his rocket policy.
Yeah, he can put it on his rocket, but I don't know. Kevin, maybe you're a rich guy. I can't, I'll never afford that. Plus I'm a cheap guy.
I'm a state employee. Let's be clear. I'm a state employee.
Well, I'm a university professor. That's even worse. I mean, that's even worse.
Some other headlines to get to, Alan, in the Smart Driving Cars newsletter, and we welcome your participation here too, Kevin. Ford has announced that along with Argo, which it partly owns, it will join with Lyft to offer autonomous rides on the Lyft ride-hailing service. The plan is to begin in Miami later this year, at Austin, Texas next year, initially with safety drivers on board, of course, I suppose, with the goal to remove them at an unspecified time.
I think it's great, but it's a gonna. Kevin did there's a difference. So I'm glad that somebody else is gonna, and I think what they're focused on is right. Certainly in the beginning you have to have a driver in there. I mean, people are going to go nuts if you don't.
They're talking about a thousand vehicles at first.
The sociology of the whole thing. I mean, when they first put elevators in buildings, there was an elevator operator. Trust me. Okay. All right. So, yes. but it's wonderful that Ford's doing that.
And one little add-on here: Lyft is getting a 2.5% stake in Argo through this deal, which is interesting.
Okay, yeah,
yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of these
I think Ford Argo paid too much, but that's all right. I'm a professor. I'd say a bunch of junk.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot more of these partnerships, right? Because, I think what you'll hear some companies say is, well, we're in the car building business. We're not in the technology business. And the technology companies saying we're not in the car building business. We're in the technology business. That's why you see these platforms going on, existing platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to get the best of breed getting together to and cooperating to do this.
Absolutely.
And as we've discussed here, Fred, also, Lyft and Uber don't get beyond 1% of the trips nationwide unless they do what is being done in Chandler and what Ford Argo expects to do in Texas and in Florida. I mean, you can't either you have to not be paying people, which that doesn't fly, or it's too darn expensive. Okay, and so when they were created, they had the vision of being there. They hit a rough spot, sold off the stuff that they were doing. Now they're getting back in with people who can maybe actually do it.
Yeah, the partnerships, like Kevin pointed out.
Exactly what Kevin said.
There's a new piece in Forbes online from Alan Onsman, headlined, "Tesla's full self-driving push is okay in California because it's not real self-driving," despite what they call it, I suppose. We were talking about private ownership, and I guess states are being asked to take a stand here.
It's totally irresponsible to call that. It's just totally irresponsible. And at some point, some entity is finally going to say, no, this this is false advertising. Twitter should take folks who talk about it off of Twitter because this is fake news. Okay, I mean, come on, it's not even close. The videos that are out there, the last release, after
we've had
2 minutes,
we've had a couple of horrific incidences here in Arizona where people, whether or not they believe their vehicle was self-driving, or they circumvented the system, but they tried to do something with the system that it wasn't capable of doing. And in one instance, we had an individual actually, the allegation is, he apparently admitted this, he put it on autopilot and took a nap, and the vehicle slammed into the back of a state trooper's vehicle that was working another accident and pushed it into an ambulance. Thankfully, nobody was killed, but it was a horrific wreck.
It's horrific, and I've commented on that one and the other ones, and said, look, the problem there may not even be autopilot. The problem is the automated emergency braking system didn't work. Oh my goodness, you're going to go on and say something's full driving when your automated emergency braking system doesn't work? How does a Tesla hit a stationary object ahead? It should never do that. It shouldn't hit a tree and burn up. It should have never hit the tree, whether or not it has full self-driving or whatever they call it.
That goes for other manufacturers too, I think.
Right.
Are you kidding? Oh, come on. Now, I think I know.
Yeah, we have to do better in that area.
We must do better. And Kevin, I'm sure you and with your motor vehicle commission there and so on are trying to get them, but my goodness, you're going to say I can take my hands off the wheel and feet off the brakes, yet this thing goes and hits things that are in the road ahead stationary. Excuse me, the code.
Alan,
there's a problem in the code.
Don't beat around the bush, Alan. How do you really feel about that?
I know. I don't. No, but I mean, and this is code. There's a line in the code someplace that says disregard that. It knew it. And they say, oh well, I won't hit the brakes. That's what the code. If you did it listening to the code and went down each line, what code just goes one line at a time. That's all code does, irrespective of what anybody else thinks. Go ahead. Yes,
for now, I mean, for now it's driver assistance. I mean, all of this is, and
Right.
people,
Advanced driver, yeah.
Let's not
still
even
have
call it
to be a
advanced.
driver.
Let's just call it, maybe it's our problem. Maybe we shouldn't be calling it advanced. Maybe we should just call driver assistance. I mean, because it's
You
not
still
really
have to be a driver. That's the point.
when it hits stationary things in the road ahead, it's not
That's the
very
problem.
advanced. It is not very advanced.
Another headline: Mercedes-Benz has put out a press release saying it is getting ready to go all electric by the end of the decade. I guess in a sense they're joining the club here.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about it, because I guess, I've owned a lot of Mercedes or whatever. So I mean, when's the last time
This covers trucking and all their platforms.
Yeah,
saying,
whatever.
right?
When's the last time I looked under the hood to see what's in a Mercedes? They don't even go vroom vroom as I go. I mean, whatever. And so
That was Mazda, I think. But go ahead.
I mean, people. I don't know that they will notice, except especially here in New Jersey, we'll never notice because none of us fill up. Kevin, you may not know, in New Jersey, there's a law that in fact you have to have an attendant fill your gas tank.
Is that still on the books?
No, that's
Yes,
still
it
on
is.
the books. I mean, we live so high on the hog here in New Jersey. People don't realize it. I mean, here Mercedes drivers don't even have to fill up their cars because
Wow.
it's full up there. I imagine
The gas station attendant lobby is pretty strong in Jersey still, huh?
I'm not saying anything. I'm keeping my legs,
Well, also in the newsletter, Alan, an ICCT report, which is related to this, a global comparison of the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of combustion engine and electric passenger cars. It says only battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles have the potential to achieve the magnitude of life cycle GHG emissions reductions needed to meet Paris Agreement goals. You had some comments on this in the newsletter.
Well, the conclusion may really be true, but I don't think they're, I don't think they began the whole darn thing right because one of the challenges of doing a replacement of an internal combustion with an electric is that if you want to look at the emissions, it's the emissions you have in the beginning. You remove the emissions of the internal combustion and you add the emission of the electric vehicle. Okay. But the electric vehicle, when you add that emission, when you do that replacement, needs its energy, needs its electricity. And the question is, where does that come from? That is new electricity that needs to be created because it doesn't exist with the internal combustion vehicle. That's new electricity. So something has to come from someplace. Now, if you take the whole electric grid and say it operates really efficiently, minimum emissions, that means that it is using only the minimum emission stuff, and the more it needs, the more emissions it's going to create. Now, if you live in a location in which Arizona, I would imagine you get all of your electricity from the sun, maybe not, I don't know, but let's assume that, and you have a ton of it. I've heard it's hot there, so you have a ton of it. So you have a bunch left over. So therefore, with this new electric vehicle, sure, hey, no emissions. But if you're in, I don't know, maybe Kentucky or Texas. I know Texas still has some coal plants. They've been trying to close all their coal plants. But because of the electric demand in Texas, they still have to have the coal plants running. Now you say, hey, I have now another electric vehicle that I have to run. Well, what do? They're going to have to keep a little bit more of the coal plants running to be able to for it. So you're actually running that sucker on coal. So if you want to do this analysis right, you have to look at the introduction of the EVs over time between now and 2050 and see what the heck is available in terms of the production of the electricity that's going to actually do these guys. Because right now, all these vehicles are running off of petroleum. that is, you know what that is. But over time, yes, it's going to get better as we get more of the whatevers and so on. But if you look at the charts, and we've talked about the charts from Lawrence Livermore, you just look at the flow charts of where energy comes from in the U.S. I mean, still, 20-some% of it is coming from coal. Okay, and if you look at what really comes from across the U.S. in terms of the electricity for the whole society and what comes from solar, you can barely see it. So just go to the Lawrence Livermore charts, and anyway, that's what we face, and you have to look at those charts over time between now and 2050 and beyond, and so on and so forth. So what we need to do is, if we're going to do this, we really have to get some. We have to deal with the electric grid infrastructure. But anyway, everybody knows that. So I don't know. I just commented on it again.
One more story. The Intel Mobileye announcement that it's testing autonomous vehicles in New York City.
We've been
with safety drivers, of course.
Yeah, well, some teases. I mean, I don't. Kevin, you're a recovered, New York City or whatever.
Still recovered. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I mean, to me, I don't know. I guess that goes in clickbait or something like that. GM, a few years ago, GM and Cruise went in there and they said that they were going to test in New York. I think in Manhattan, they lasted about 12 seconds and they said, oh my goodness, I'm just not Frank Sinatra on this thing. I mean, Kevin, what you've done there in Arizona, some of us might like to say it was easy there, okay, because you do have the climate, you do have some relatively new streets, you have a nice place to do it and so on. Some of us don't have as good as that, but my goodness, let's get this working. Let's get this really working there. New York, I mean, that's at the end of some asymptote out there. By the time this thing can deliver any value to Manhattan, I mean, we are going to be such a large percentage of the U.S. will have so much value, and then we'll finally get the man. They have a subway, they have cabs, you can walk most places that you really want to go in Manhattan. I mean, cut it out. That's
often faster than you can get there in a car.
Yeah, GM Cruise has been operating here as well, doing some testing here, and they also do San Francisco. San Francisco, maybe before New York, who knows?
Oh, and in fact, I sure hope Trenton is before San Francisco, and I sure hope Mercer County, and I sure hope most of New Jersey, and I sure hope most of Arizona, and so on is in fact before downtown San Francisco. Downtown San Francisco has a pretty good transportation system.
If there's anything we could do to help or provide input to you and I mean, we need to work on this together.
Hey, thank you very much for the offer, because we're going to be knocking.
Come to Arizona. Come, we'll take a ride and we'll go see the op center and go see some commercial truck operations.
We're going to take you up on that.
Open invitation.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Kevin. Thank you so very much. And what I'd like to do is see if I can. I'd like to, of course, bring the governor, the commissioner, and everybody else in tow out there. I mean, I think, look. You are the only place in the world that anybody can bring anybody to actually see this working in the real. Period. End of statement.
And we
That's
really want
That's not bad, Kevin. Congratulate. No, seriously. Look, and you should raise a flag. You should tell the world. Absolutely, and be proud of it. And I know you are. I know you are.
We are proud of the structure that our leaders here have set up and have allowed this to happen.
Hey, we're watching you, and we want to emulate you.
And thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to be with us and for all of the pioneering work there.
Well, I thank you for this opportunity, and this has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to having a conversation with you gentlemen again.
It seems to me that the real difference here is that you are looking for reasons to say yes instead of reasons to say no. Thank you to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO, and more information is available at motoetf.com. You can find us once again at smartdrivingcar.com, on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever you turn to for podcasts. You can get your smart speaker to play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching. Please continue to stay safe.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you, Kevin.